That's a scene from the upcoming world premiere of Static. I love how he's got all these serious fears and then he suddenly is, oh, I'm so fired, right? Which is exactly the way our fear responses work, is that combination of rational and irrational. How does Max's confrontation of fear reflect our own confrontation or lack of confrontation?
I think he's really very much an everyman. We all have very big fears, fears of intimacy, fears of the unknown, fears of death. And then we also have really very small fears, that phone call that you should have made in the morning, so by the afternoon you want to put it off because you just don't want to confront it, and you just make it even worse and worse. And really, in so many ways, a lot of the fears that we have, if we just confront them, you know, the fear is so much greater than the actual consequences of just acting.
Now, those other voices that we heard in that clip, are those clips of things that people phoned into you, or where did those other voices come from?
That's a little actual foreshadowing of the scenes that are to come and the characters that actually represent fears that Max has collected over the years.
Oh, cool. So I want to talk about how the fears that you collected from people fit into this, but first I want to listen to a few of them because we've got this great audio of this. Now, people called in from all over the world, and here's one of them.
Hello, my name is Anne. I'm 74 years old, so I'm at the end of my life, and I feel that I'm somewhat qualified to talk about fear, especially having grown up in Nazi Germany with Gestapo men in black coats standing at the door. That was a very real fear that I have not forgotten to this day. My own fear, the biggest fear, is fear of physical pain. I think to have a very substantial fear of this is you have to have experienced it.
That's a caller from Germany, I think, and that's obviously a very serious and very understandable fear and very concrete. But you also had other fears that were much more unusual. Let's listen to another.
Growing up, I was used to grind my teeth when I was sleeping, and my dentist and doctors would always say, so I've always been terrified of losing my teeth, and hopefully by the time I get old and gray, they'll have fantastic dental implants for me.
You can almost still hear the kind of feeling of anxiety in his own voice. Was that one sort of typical in the sense of the fear is partly something that a person creates themselves in a certain way?
Actually, yeah. We expected people would call in and say that they were afraid of flying or heights and stuff. But a lot of people were afraid of themselves, afraid of things that they, couldn't act on or didn't act on. I mean, a lot of them were confessions about things that were on their minds, about things about themselves that were holding them back. Not exterior things like we expected.
Right. I want to listen to one last fear, and this one's probably the most unusual of the ones that I heard.
Hi there. I have a kind of an odd fear, apparently. I am very, very afraid of fish. Alive, dead, however they are, I really, really hate them. I can think of nothing scarier than that section of the pet store where it's all fish in glass aquariums, because I'm sure that if I walk through that section, all of the glass will break and fish will fall on me. Honestly, nothing scarier out there than a bunch of fish falling on you. Okay, that's my fear.
Not going to a sushi restaurant anytime soon. Fear of fish there. Now, were you surprised at all that so many people called in to tell you their fears?
We were really quite surprised. And just such the broad range of fears, and how I think the fact that it was a voicemail message and you could remain anonymous, it was a very voyeuristic exercise. It really meant people could be completely honest and completely open, where I don't think would have been able to be in other ways.
There does seem to be that sort of urge to confess. I mean, think about those websites like Post Secret where people send in their secrets and stuff. We want that ability to confess somehow, I guess.
Yeah, and it was interesting because when Chris and I were writing the show and working on the show, Chris set it up so that the phone calls could come into the computer, to the internet. So we would be working away, and all of a sudden we get a beep, and we have another fear, and we'd listen to it, and it was just a very sort of creepy thing to sort of suddenly listen to somebody who you don't know tell you something so personal about themselves.
So what role do these messages of fear play in the actual show, Static?
Well, the show is a combination of theater, and it's also a combination of other art mediums like dance and opera and film. These fears have been incorporated into one of the installations. It is very much a collective mixed media show.
Interesting. So I know that you two have done a lot of work on the idea of the urban environment and what role that plays in our psyche and so on. How do you think fear plays into our experience of city life?
I think everywhere you look on a billboard and you see people use fear to sell you underarm deodorant. Fear is used by governments. Fear is used, the signs everywhere. I think living in a city can be a frightening, especially nowadays, can be a frightening prospect.
Mm-hmm. But is there a use for fear at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, the genesis of fear is obviously to keep you safe, but I think the idea we're exploring is, when does that go awry? When does that just kind of take a bit of a left turn? And I think that's a very popular concept right now, is people who are having children today, are they keeping them too safe? Mm-hmm. And it's sort of perpetuating a culture of fear that just has become so dominating with 24-hour news and stuff that's happening, that, yeah, you use it for its purpose, but it can certainly be taken too far.
So what would you hope that somebody who goes to a performance of Static would come away from it with?
I hope that they would leave fearless. I hope that they enter and they have an opportunity to examine how fear affected this one character, but then also how fear affects themselves. And hopefully once you can recognize it and you can and identify it and understand it, then hopefully then you're in a better position really to fight it.
If I could also add that the show isn't a show in the sense that you just kind of sit and watch the show. You do move around the space, and the audience is, in a safe way, challenged to participate on some level, so that it is an experience, really, rather than a show.
Mm-hmm. Right, because you do actually move around to a bunch of different sites within the Harbourfront Centre,
We're
which
in
is
6
fairly
different
large.
spaces.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the character who plays Max, the security guard, is an actor named Clinton Walker. Have you given him any special advice? I mean, this is a pretty intense thing that this guy is going through, right?
Yeah, we've really had him look at his relationship with fear as well, and just look at
reality that I felt. My teeth were falling.
Directly one-on-one on a personal basis, and I think everybody has a little tinge of that inside of themselves, so it's really given him a chance to explore his own fears and amplify them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's ironic, I guess, that he's so afraid that he's nearly driven to suicide, which ending, death is one of the greatest fears that we have, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's actually a night security watchman at Harbourfront Centre, and that's really why we're in that building, and we love the irony of somebody who is paralyzed by fear, but at the same time, he's surrounded by art, and art is all about being fearless, and it's all about taking risks. So here he is in this temple of fearlessness, and yet he hides there at night and just can't leave and interact with the world outside.
We started off the conversation by hearing that audio, your voicemail message requesting people's fears. Now I have to ask you, what would you say on that?
I think up until recently, I think I would have said that my biggest fear was doctors and needles and hospitals and all things medical, but I had a baby a few months ago, so I think I've at least confronted that fear, if not conquered it.
How about you, Chris?
I'd say opening night right now is the most frightening thing. It's such a public display of your work, and you have a room full of people who have spent money, and you have critics there, and your friends and family, and you've made choices over 2 years, and you just hope the choices are the right ones.
Well, you said you wanted to get beyond your safe theatrical experience, so here you go. Have you ever thought about that, actually, though? That, I mean, it is such a wacky thing that creative people do to put themselves at such risk and risk humiliation, really.
Yeah,
Sorry, but it's true.
But it's true. You have to do something new. You have to take a risk, and if it's going to be something that's exciting and that has a payoff for the audience, it has to be something that is outside of that circle of being safe, and something that has been done before. And that's really for us, mixing the different art forms into the story, mixing the movement, the MP3 players for the audience, the audio, mixing that all in is frightening. We're now having the chance, we're right at that point where we're seeing all the different pieces glued together, and we see that we have a show coming together, and it's really exciting, and I think it will be something that people haven't experienced before.